This channel is made possible by viewers like you. My viewers, subscribers, and patrons greatly help to keep this channel going. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for all of you. Please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any uploads. And if you'd like to go the extra mile, please check out my Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you'll get access to what I'm working on, previews of upcoming content, and even early videos, along with other tier options for those that are interested. Thank you, and now on to the video. Have you ever got into a developer's particular games, and then you wonder what they made before all of that? Many modern players probably jumped into their first adventure with Sucker Punch through Ghost of Tsushima. This was a really good game, and in some ways I consider this the swan song to the PS4. But before this, Sucker Punch was hard at work, making memorable and great games. Personally, I'm a huge fan of their infamous titles, especially the first. It managed to create a superhero game, fused with third-person shooting, and it was all within this new original setting. This wasn't an adaptation, but rather a new thing inspired by all the classic capes and hero comics. But before this, they contributed to the cartoony and beloved platformers of the PS2, with their own spin with stealth and awesome style. Sly Cooper is in the upper tier of original Sony properties, and honestly, I thought Sly was Sucker Punch's first game. But when I began to confirm this, I found out that I was completely wrong within that area. Sly was actually their second game, but it was their first PlayStation title. Their first game was a Nintendo 64 exclusive. Rocket Robot on Wheels is a pretty cool platformer that ranks as a solid game that I think gets forgotten. And even with all the games that I play, both new and indie and retro alike, I didn't even know this was a thing. But I'm really happy that I took the time to enjoy this more under-the-radar title, because it has so much charm and for the most part has aged very well. Something I really like, and I've noticed a lot more when going back to older styles, is the lack of handholding that it provides to the player. Many modern titles tend to provide a decent amount of handholding to get the player up to speed, but after that point, games should sort of leave it up to the player. But instead, many will often provide elongated tutorials, or even worse, when it feels like they're holding back parts of the game to not overwhelm the player. Sure, there are cases where this works just fine, and creates accessible and memorable experiences, but when playing more retro titles, there is a more hands-off type of approach. In some cases, you get some guidance, or maybe you need to go to the manual to get something, but much of it is you trying to just figure it out. This can even be weaved into the game, teaching the player early on things that they need to keep an eye out for, so that they're in that mindset, so when things get flipped around and challenge the player, after that point, it's satisfying. Plus, when this is provided with that room of some freedom, as a player it creates a space that is something that we want to be in, and creates challenges that can feel personal to accomplish. The game didn't really tell you to do X and Y, but rather you observed your environment and made some choices and tried some things out, and you were able to obtain that item, beat a level, or unlock some sort of secret. This is what it felt like when I started up Rocket for the first time. It was immediately fun and a space I wanted to play within. As I just touched on, I really like the freedom within Rocket Robot on Wheels. You get some pointers here and there on what you need to do, and then you have your objective of rescuing the park, and then you're off. Your first level is a textured one. It feels fully realized as this classic theme park type of a thing, and while most of your actions at this point revolve around zipping around on your wheel, jumping, and being able to grab items with your tractor beam, the first stage provides plenty of surprises. You will find things that won't make sense at first, like rings that look like an obvious speed challenge. But while you try to do this on your one wheel, you'll learn that you don't really have the power to do it right now. You find out later on that there is a vehicle of some kind that you need to unlock, but the game tells you you need to find that car, but you have no idea where it is. It's all up to you to go find it, so that you can probably use this to complete the speed challenge and earn another ticket. Or maybe you go searching around and notice an area of sorts that looks like a doorway. The game doesn't explicitly say, hey, this is a mini dungeon, but rather you try to go inside, and that is exactly what you end up finding. Or maybe you ignore most of the beach within the starting area, and you happen to travel up top. Find a tent full of little games to play based off of stuff that you would actually see at a fair or an amusement park. You notice there's screws in different spots of the map. Once you find the location to place these guys, it opens up an area where you can create your own roller coaster track to grab additional tokens and tickets. It's impressive the amount of stuff and variety that is just packed into the very first level. It makes the entire experience very memorable and welcoming to continue going with the rest of the game. It's smart design that does discovery and exploration really well. Plus, there's plenty of room for choice, as one player might want to start out on the beach, whereas another might want to go up top. And outside of the camera, the controls are pretty easy to get into for this title, especially from this era. It is really cool when you go back to some of these older titles and they surprise you. Maybe it was a game you played as a kid, and you see that sure, it has some dated elements here and there, but overall the specialness that you loved about it as a kid is still there. Maybe you revisit a story beat that was really memorable to you, or maybe you enjoy a mechanic that was compelling, or the first of something you saw at the time. Being that I grew up during this time with great titles from Nintendo, Sega, and Sony, along with many others, there were so many games to play, and even with more time than I have to play them today, it was impossible to do everything. I never owned an N64, and enjoyed most of those games that I came across from friends that had them. And most of the time it was great party games, co-op games, or multiplayer titles. So now, on occasion, I very much like to seek out titles from then, and maybe even further back that I never played before. You never really know when you're going to encounter another golden nugget, especially when it's a title that seems to be forgotten even today. When that happens, it feels extra special, and when you make YouTube videos, you really want to share some of that. Rocket Robot on Wheels definitely is turning into that sort of title for me. In some ways, it reminds me of a simpler time, an even better time too. Games were fun, the writing was generally simple, with a lot of attention placed on the gameplay. Here we have a title that just has so much visual charm and personality to it, that you can see in so many ways how this is the title that really got Sucker Punch's feet wet, and then going on from here they made the Sly Cooper series. It is a shame that Rocket never got another game, but being a solid one-off displays the talent and passion from Sucker Punch, and it means that this title deserves a bit more attention. This was their very first game, and while some may stumble, it seemed like they hit the ground running very well. And it is kind of funny to think that a developer that would go on to be some of PlayStation's best started out as a developer for the N64. Have you played Rocket or even heard of it? If so, let me know your thoughts on it, or maybe other Sucker Punch games that you enjoy as well. Let me know all of this in the comments down below. If you're interested in being notified of new videos, please hit the subscribe button and bell. And if you would like to support the channel and get early access to content, please check out my Patreon. All of the links will be at the end of this video and within the description. And thank you very much for watching.